Hey everybody, this is Mike LaPone from Symphony X and Mike LaPone's Silent Assassins, and this is SAGAS.
What's going on, everybody? This is Corbin, the Serpentine Skipper, and I have a very special guest with me today. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yo, what's up? This is Jordan from Skipping Stone in Louisville, Kentucky. How's it going?
Not bad, not bad. How are you?
I am alive. It is early morning here, and I've got my coffee.
You can't ask for a better morning. Okay, yeah. So once again, thank you for taking the time out. I really appreciate having you on.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate you casting an invite here, man. It's always fun doing this kind of stuff.
Well, I'm glad you're enthusiastic. So am I. So the first thing I want to start with is, where did the idea for this band come along, and how did it get formed?
It starts before I was there. I believe it was. You could really kind of trace the roots back to our guitar. Some of our guitar players, Tom and Kelly. They had kind of just started like fiddling around together and filling out a lineup. And as any band does, that goes through many changes early on. I think it took them about a year to get a point where they had a really solid lineup, and then everybody dipped. And so at around that same time, I had just kind of moved to the area, was been a musician since I was a kid, but I didn't really play that much out in bands or anything, mostly just kind of in the basement. And my wife was encouraging me to get out there and find some other musicians to play with. And I tried a couple projects that weren't really the thing for me. But I found this Craigslist ad. They were looking for a bass player and a singer. So I auditioned for both and got neither of those parts. They said, Jordan, you're a better guitar player than you are a bass player. And I was like, yeah, I'm a guitar player more than anything else. I can sing. I like singing. But I also struggle because I'm legally deaf. I wear hearing aids just to communicate and everything else. But in that process, they were like, we'd rather have you on guitar and see if we can keep processing and keep going for another bass player and a singer. Around that same time, I found a bass player that was really good at the time, and we couldn't find a singer, so they defaulted and said, Jordan, you can do it. So here we are. Skipping Stone is 3 guitar players, bass player, drummer. We've gone through some lineup changes, quite a few with drummers, and 1 bass player that we ended up swapping out here last year. But things have been going really well for us. We've been pushing along, trucking along nonstop.
Nice. Just to go back real quick to the thing you said, what's it like being legally deaf? Like, are you like, if you take them out, you can't hear anything? Or like 90%?
Well, I suffer from a genetic disease. It's called Meniere's, and it typically doesn't occur in people until they're well into their 60s. It causes a lot of vertigo and dizziness and things like that. I started getting it when I was about 13. This disease really acts weird because what it is the fluid sacs that regulate your balance that are inside your ears. Those are defective for me. One can't really process up, down, left, and right. And as those things burst in your ear and cause that dizziness, think of it like water in the Grand Canyon or something. It is eroding away parts of those ear canals in the hearing that I have. So the cilia that regulate that hearing is just kind of being eaten away every time that happens. And that's been happening for 15 years at this point.
Wow.
So as I continue to get older and I continue to live with this, I'm only going to lose more and more hearing as it goes. But it takes away the low end first than it does, whereas most people lose their high end in hearing. So it's a little bit different for me. We have some ways to get around that. Technology is really advanced. Hearing aids are helpful, so I can communicate. Most people don't really notice the difference because they have it projected in there. And I'll be honest, it's quite loud. If I wear a pair of headphones, I'm usually pretty okay. After a show, I probably can't understand a word anybody says, but that's just kind of life and living with it. And to me, I guess knowing that inevitably it seems like I won't be able to hear anything at all, it just makes more sense to use it while I got it.
No, that's fair enough. Actually, it's very interesting that I get a chance to talk with someone like you because just two to 3 weeks ago, I was watching my regular wrestling program. I love wrestling program, and a guy got kicked in the ear, and he fucked up his equilibrium for like 10 minutes.
Exactly.
So he was like stumbling. He couldn't walk properly.
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is when that happens. It's like being like on a roller coaster or in a car, and it comes to a sudden stop. Your body cannot determine which way is up because one side of it tells it that everything is fine, but the other side tells it that the world is spinning. You can actually physically see it happening. I've had to go through so many tests and stuff to confirm that I had this disease. But essentially, when it's physically happening, they can trigger it, but the eyes are actually moving inside your head the whole time. They cannot focus, so you just kind of see it like ticking like that. So my trick for when it does happen is I just look off in the distance and don't move my head and like stare at something stationary that I know isn't moving. And I can see it, but eventually, if it's far enough away, I can really lock on it, and it helps me kind of like calm down. If it's real bad, then I usually just go to sleep.
Yeah. Oh wow, no, that's really interesting. You definitely have something rare. So you became the singer. And then when did you? So what year did you record your first single with the band or first material?
Ooh. We formed in summer, like peak COVID of 2020. Started in a garage, and that year we went and recorded our first single and released it in December, I believe. That one was Wither. And we've come a long way since then. It's a great song. It's kind of got like a post grungy kind of vibe, almost a little bit creedy, but it's a decent. It's a great song. They had it written before I joined the band. I just added the vocals to it, and a little bit of guitar here and there, but it was mostly done. We loved the process. We loved the audio engineer that we work with. Shout out to Jordan Bailey. And we decided to stick with him. We went back and started recording immediately. And we went on to release another single, CMD or Call Me Daddy, which is just a joke song. And then that people thought it was hilarious, and it's been like a staple that we have to play at almost every show. We have special tidy whitey merchandise that goes for it. You can get yourself a pair of tidy whiteys that say "Call Me Daddy" across the back, and then we put a logo on the front, and then I'll put like secret messages on the front of it as well. Every time every time I make a batch, I'll change it. I think the last one we did was like, in my defense, it's cold outside. But after that single, we went on to release our first EP, which was the Monsters of Men EP. And that combined those two singles with an updated, like remastered version, and then 4 other songs as well. Monsters was I think a really good success for us. It really kind of put us on the map in the local scene here. And it's allowed us to kind of like get the ground running. That EP actually won a couple awards. We have a local newspaper here, and they do like a fan voted best of in the area. We won for best album, best song, and best original act in the area for that year. It was pretty cool.
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And secondly, when I was listening to it, instrumentally, I got so many different vibes, and interestingly enough, the two that stuck with me, and maybe you think I'm wrong, who knows? But the two things that matched in my head when I was listening to that EP was a combination of the band Sick Puppies and Nickelback.
Okay, sure. I can see that. We get a lot of inspiration from bands like that. We intentionally try to write our songs so that they are almost universal. That you could go and play. We could go and play a show with Nickelback, but we can also go and play a show with bands like I Set My Friends on Fire. We just had a show with Heartsick or and Fight From Within. If you know those guys, we can play with those heavier bands, and we don't necessarily stick out like a sore thumb. One of our I think our biggest inspirations is like Bullet for My Valentine, because we like that kind of hot and cold from clean to dirty in the vocals, and we're very guitar driven, being that we have 3 guitar players. It allows us to have a really big sound even live, so it's not that far off from what you're hearing on the EP. That's us. We're not adding a whole ton of tricks typically, but I could definitely see Sick Puppies in there. That's a really good one. Nickelback makes sense. I'm a big fan of like Alter Bridge, so absolutely.
Speaking on that topic, going from hot to cold, clean to dirty. Who would you say is the best? Like, in your opinion, who's the best singer that can do both, hot and cold?
Shoot. That's a tough one. Carnival has to be one of my favorite bands of all time, and they kind of have that, but he tends to be on the cleaner side.
Yeah.
I would say like Atreyu. I really liked like the Lead Sails Paper Anchors album, but that's also like a 2-piece when it comes to vocals, whereas the drummer is typically doing the cleans and the singer is doing the screams. However, the singer does do some of the cleans as well. So that guy.
For me, as a very late millennial, someone who grew up listening to music, recognizing music in the mid to late 2000s, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this once this comes out. But in my opinion, it's just personal bias, obviously, but Ronnie Radke.
Dude's
I
awesome.
think,
hands down.
He's a cocky bitch. I think he's a shitty person,
rock
but
star.
his music.
He's doing everything that every rock star from the 80s did. He embraces that more than life personality through and through. If you go back and look at bands that were popular in the 80s and when rock stars were a real thing, they were these huge personalities that were abrasive and in your face. And that is exactly what Ronnie Radke is doing. I don't necessarily even believe he believes half the shit he says. He's just doing it because it is both rage worthy, content worthy, and it gets people interested in talking about it one way or another. I firmly believe that all press is good press kind of thing. That does a lot for what he does. Back in Escape the Fate versus Falling in Reverse, both bands were fantastic. Personally, I kind of like Escape the Fate with Craig more than I liked it with Ronnie. I think Falling in Reverse is better than Escape the Fate with Ronnie. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's just and plus, like, I've always thought Ronnie's growls, his harsh vocals are so much heavier than your normal singing kid vocal death growl.
Certainly. And you can, just from his latest single there, you can see the absolute range that this man has vocally. It is insane.
Yeah. No, he's definitely, as I said, he's definitely a biased fan of mine, especially with all the heat he's getting lately. It's kind of a bit hard to express that, but I've always been a fan of his, so I guess I'll never change.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Good music's good music, man.
Yeah, exactly. So Monsters of Men, and then talk about the other EP, the Hurricanes and Hand Grenades. Was that so? Because to me, my initial first thoughts with the Hurricanes one, it felt instrumentally, sonically, it just felt like that was more of a it sounded like that was more of a let's try new things kind of vibe than a structural one on the Monsters of Men.
Yes. Monsters was us having worked together for a year and developing all of these songs and going, we have all this written, let's go record it. And we really made very minor changes. It was go in, lay down the songs as it is, the end. Whereas Hurricanes, from the success of the first one, we were able to raise enough funds to go back and start recording the process immediately. We laid down the next 4 songs, and these songs, they were absolutely different. There was 1 or 2 that we had from that same beginning process when we were recording. But like songs like Quietus, that one was different. It was meant to be attacky, buzzy, almost thrashy, and different. Like, we wanted it to be a little bit heavier. And then Sink or Swim came, and that's what I would call maybe our heaviest song. That one was written about what was going on in with the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Specifically, there was a news story that was written about a Ukrainian lady who was handing out flower seeds to all of the invading soldiers as they were marching by, and she would give them to him and say, "This is for when you die, so that the flowers grow." And I was like, that is the most brutal, badass thing I've ever heard. That needs to be immortalized. So we wrote Sink or Swim, and the line in there is, these seeds that your pockets have sown, flowers planted in a row, your name will never be carved in stone, just roots twisting around your bones.
Yep.
One of my favorite lines I've ever written. I'm kind of proud of that one. But that was, specifically supposed to talk about that situation. I thought it was awesome. We wanted to immortalize that, and it meant that it had heavier elements, but also like inspiration from like System of a Down. And I really wanted Tom to really feature and maybe be a main focus on that song. He's got a great growl, great vocal in there. So I wanted him to do that. And I'd still love more for Tom. Maybe we'll give Tom like a whole song to himself sometime.
Nice. Yeah, that song, Sink or Swim, it really got to me because vocally, I was trying to pinpoint what I was listening to. I was like, what does this sound like? It was confusing me. I was trying to match the sound to a singer, and then I realized I think it sounded more like an 80s power metal, very theatrical, very like theatrical speaking, I can't think of a band off the top of my head, but like a very 80s like powerful vocals.
That's cool. I'll take that. I couldn't even tell you where I pulled that one vocally from. Our process for writing is a little bit different. So that one in particular started off with that intro riff, and that came from our guitar player, Kelly. And we just love the riff, and we're like, let's hammer down on that. Go from there. And in that practice session, we started just kind of like, well, okay, what do we do next? Where's the vocals come in? How do we add to it? And typically once I hear something, I lock in a melody. And then I form the words last. The words have to connect with that melody and fill in the exact syllabic pattern that I have listed or already written in that point. So like the words are important, but less important than the melody, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that whole EP was like us trying a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit not. But it was supposed to be different sonically. And this time we took a little bit more time in the studio to make sure that everything kind of filled out. And I liked it. But we have that writing bug, so we went right back. And we've been recording still and releasing, singles and singles after that as well. I think Vertigo is the one that's had the most production. With that, we took the most time to go in there and go, no, not that. It's got to be something else. Let's figure this out. And the solo section in Vertigo is so big and very theatrical like that. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I think we're doing something good here, guys. Let's keep doing this. And that's been our goal here for a little while, is just to keep pumping out single after single after single. I think what we'll do is, once we have the last couple ones recorded, we'll collect all of those from that moment on and put them into one more EP, and then keep going.
Yeah. So I have a few questions in my head, which I start with first. I'll start. So I listened to Monsters 2, the single, obviously, and and it had me thinking: are you planning on doing actually speaking about Ronnie, like a Guillotine series?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, I love that. This War Is Ours has to be one of my favorite all-time songs, and we got to play with Escape the Fate last year, and it was amazing. They're some of the nicest dudes. And initially when the first song Monster was written, there was no intention of anything like that. It was just a song, and people liked it. And we played a show in Southern Kentucky, and met a really nice guy, John. And John's been a dedicated follower ever since. We talk to him all the time, and he made the suggestion. He's like, you should do a part 2. And I was like, okay, where would we even start, right? Like, what would we do? And it's like I went back and visited those Guillotine songs, and I was like, they're together as one, but they're their own separate things. They don't necessarily have to go together. I was like, I feel like I want it to be more of like a theatrical performance. If we were going to play this, let's do it so that if you stop the one song and go right into the next, you would never know that it even stopped. And so I picked up my guitar, and the first thing that came to me was that opening lick, that and my goal was like, all right, let's keep it in the same time, the same key, just go. And I just kind of reevaluated the lyrics from the first one and wrote the next story. And we took our time writing that song, and laying it down and recording. It's different, I'll give it that, but it's also, I feel like maybe our most commercial song at this point. I feel like it's got the best opportunity for like radio or something like that.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, if you're ever planning on doing a third Monsters, it should be like a duet with like a tortured relationship. Bring a girl in, and just be like a tortured. She has her side, you have your side. A broken relationship. Cool. You're both the monsters.
That's cool.
And the third one, yeah. And you're gonna continue.
We had a guy suggest a part 3, and he's like, you should call it do a part 3, or whatever the last part of it is, be Monster Piece. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that. We haven't started on it yet, and maybe in the near future, but I like the idea of doing even a third part to maybe finish out make it a trilogy.
The Serbius.
Yeah.
What is that called? 3 heads. The 3-headed monster.
There you go.
Okay, so you talk about obviously releasing tons of singles and EPs, but are you planning on doing like an album? Studio?
Kind of. The goal this year really was to get in the studio as much as possible. That is so hard to do. Everybody has, lives. I have a kid with special needs. Kelly just had another child. Getting in the studio is it takes time, and a lot of money. And we are old school. We don't record ourselves. We have an audio engineer for that. We'll stick to the making the music part, and this guy can do all that work with the recording. I'd love to learn it, but it's a skill that we do not possess at the moment. So our goal initially was to release a new single every month, and everybody told us that was way too aggressive. That most bands at the earliest would do every 6 weeks, and I was like, okay, but who cares? Right? At this point, like, the biggest reason that people want to release it that long of a gap in between is because they want to have the time to get on like maybe the Spotify editorial playlists and stuff like that. We're too small of a band. Nobody's gonna care, right? We haven't gotten on those fancy playlists yet, and I guess the only way that we're going to is if we get some attention on us. So if we can be consistent and keep pushing as much music out as fast as we can, maybe that'll be good for us. Maybe it won't. I don't care. We're just gonna do our thing.
Nice. So yeah, what's the plan? What's the so in your mind, what does the future, the immediate, the near future look like for Skipping Stone as a band?
We've got quite a few shows lined up here through the end of the year. Our calendar's pretty full. Our goal is to go and record at least one more song. I was in the studio last night laying down the vocals for one of my favorite songs that we've written. Then we've got this other one that we want to do, and we're just going to keep writing. I'd like to have both of those songs out by the end of the year. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We've got goals of really getting on the road and touring next year. I've talked to quite a few bands in the areas. One of my favorites, the Lonely Ones. We played with them a couple of times. It's kind of like the sister band to Boba Flex, if you remember them. They are super cool dudes, and I'd love to get on a couple shows with them, maybe do a quick run, and there's a couple other really great bands that are local even that we'd love to do some runs with, and kind of just get ourselves out there. I'd love to do a full album, but people don't consume music like they used to anymore. It's all about the song versus the album at this point. So while the idea of an album is really intriguing for us, I don't see that in our future, at least not in the near future. We've got a contest that we just entered in that is held in New York City. It's a fan vote on their website called The Opening Act. And you can vote for free once daily. And the winner of that vote, when it's all said and done, gets a chance to go play a big giant show in New York and a $10,000 cash prize. And with that cash prize, we'd probably go in and have the ability to record something like an album at that point. Currently, we're sitting in first place on that. It's got, I think, just under 2 days left for the next round, and that will lock in the top 15. From there, I presume it's going to go down to the top 10, and then maybe the top 5, and then maybe they'll announce a winner at that point. But it's going to be probably a few weeks before we really see the end of this, and I'm just going to keep bothering everybody to go vote so that we can lock this in.
While before I release this, I'll have you send me a link so I could edit it right there.
Oh, sure.
Once it's loaded.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and then people who listen, they can just type it in or click it and then go on the way. And vote for you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm curious, as a singer and a musician, what's your take? So are you the kind of guy that thinks it's healthy to bring your various emotions into the studio with you, or keep that separate? Because a lot of people emphasize, bringing my emotions, my anger, my sadness makes the best music. Or some people think, no, just leave it out. Do you, like, neutrally?
Yes and no. I think that when it comes to studio time, I am there using up our engineers' time, right? Like it is, I try to be very respectful of that. We try not to goof around too much. It is very much a fun thing for us to do, but it's, we're very serious about what we're doing. But the music, like you said, does require that emotion. A good performance has your whole heart in it. Think of it kind of like method acting, you are that person, you are that song. So, just kind of like playing along isn't going to get the message across. It isn't going to stick, because anybody can go up there and sing karaoke. Anybody can do that, but you until you believe it, nobody else will.
Yeah. So like, it's just like how in instances when someone's, you've heard limitless bands who have a really shitty day. They broke up with their partner. They got in, they got into a fight, road rage, something, and they bring that with them. And then some people say that it makes their songs more aggressive. It makes how they sound more intense.
100%. Those type of tragedies breed art. That's because people don't necessarily know how otherwise to express themselves. That's 100% true for me. When we were recording for the Monsters of Men EP, our bass player was in another band, and we had a scheduled show that was like booked on top of each other. So we had a substitute bass player at the time, who was now our permanent bass player. But Chris at that time went off to go play this big battle of the bands with his other band. And they were on stage for their part of the competition, and their guitar player Randy suffered from a heart attack and passed away during their performance. It was brutal. It was sad. We were about to go on stage when we got the call about what had happened. And that is what inspired and is the majority of the story of the song "Trust Me, Everything's Going to Be Fine." That's Randy's quote. That's something he would say all the time. And I wanted to pay homage to him. Chris and I wrote that song lyrically together. As a band, we sat there and had a very strong session, both emotionally and sonically, to write that song. And it's been our most popular for a while. And I think it's because those types of things cause that type of art to really like resonate with people. People all feel those types of losses, and they want something that they can help express that emotion with.
Yeah. No, definitely music. Yeah. It's cliche to say, but music is a form of expression. And,
Certainly.
And everyone expresses it differently, So yeah, that's fucked, like it seems like every other day life itself reminds you just how sick and twisted it can be,
Certainly. Yes, I feel that every day.
Yeah, it's fucked. I'm curious, you've talked about, obviously what's coming up in the future. You've talked about, the band's history. And one thing I'm curious about is when it's all said and done, what's one sentence you'd want the world to remember your band by?
Shoot. Like a lyric of ours, or just?
Oh, just like, they were one of the most passionate bands I've ever seen, or they were the most.
I could be super serious about this, but I don't want to be like, we're the coolest band ever. So I'm going to say something that is like I think it's on our TikTok profile right now. We make music for people who can't admit that they like Creed.
That hit me right in the... Actually, I never cared about Creed. Like I never understood the hate. So
Personally, I don't either. Mark Tremonti and the instrumentals in that band are phenomenal. Heck, even that "Can You Take Me Higher," that's iconic. Everybody knows that thing. To me, that's a good freaking band. Scott Stapp may be a little weird for certain, but then the Alter Bridge was born, and that's got Miles Kennedy, who is a god. I can't not like them. They're like, there was a tour just recently that came to town, and it was Alter Bridge and Seven Dust, which is some of the best two bands out there, at all. And that is what I want. I would love for my band to be on that level,
Nice. Well, you've got decades to go, and I'm sure one day when it's all said and done, you guys will make your own Creed. Oh,
there you go.
Look, that's all I have for you today. Again, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for coming onto the SAGAS Metal Podcast. It's been fun. You're a very energetic and very, passionate guest, which is always good to have on because it makes it easier to go back and forth with.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me. Shout out. Thanks again. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff for this dude.
Yep. Thank you very much. And I'll make sure, like I said, once I do the editing, I'll find where we talked about it. I'll put the link up for the voting, and we'll try to get you as many votes as we can.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All good. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good one, man.
All right, have a good one.
All right, bye.